Welcome to the show. Global warming literally takes center stage tomorrow when more than 100 musical acts take part in what's being called live Earth concerts. They'll be on all 7 continents, including Antarctica. It's yet one more sign that awareness of global warming has gained steam in recent years. President George Bush himself recently acknowledged the threat. Leading the charge is former Vice President Al Gore. He is the force behind tomorrow's big gig. There's talk that Gore might even win a Nobel Peace Prize for his work, and yet here's something you might not know. Not everybody agrees that human beings are the main cause of global warming, much less that we can do anything to reverse it. More on that in a minute. How scared should you be? We'll tell you. Then the Clintons and the White House are trading insults over presidential pardons, but why? Is it wise politics for either side to bring that up? And speaking of the White House, it's President Bush's 61st birthday today. In addition to a golf bag, he received a present from the state of New Mexico. Unfortunately, it's the last thing he wanted. Details in a minute. And Barack Obama got a huge reception in Iowa this week. Wait till you find out who loves him. Loves him a lot. But first, the debate over global warming. Joining me now is Myron Ebell, the Director of Energy and Global Warming Policy at the Competitive Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. Myron, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So it seems that everybody agrees the temperature is rising. That's measurable. Should we be worried?
I don't think so.
But people are terrified.
Well, because there are a lot of scaremongers like Al Gore and sort of politically activist scientists out there telling us that we should be scared. I think the historical evidence is we're in a mild warming trend, and the impacts are very modest, and some of them are positive and some of them are negative. I don't know why we should be losing sleep over
well, Al Gore says that 100 years from now there will be glaciers. They will have, or there'll be far fewer glaciers. They'll have melted, dumping all that water into the world's oceans, and the levels will rise, and your condo will be underwater.
Well, I hate to kick a guy when he's down, but I guess I will. The problem with Al Gore is that he's been looking for...
Well, he's down. Al Gore's like on the way to getting a Nobel Peace Prize. Al Gore is more famous than he's ever been.
He's got these family problems at the moment, which are causing him to have to cut back on his schedule. Al Gore has been looking for a world crisis his whole life that he can come through and save the world. He wants to be a superhero action figure, and he's been looking for an apocalyptic movement his entire life, and so basically he makes this stuff up. There is no scientific support for most of his claims.
Okay, but we know it's getting warmer. I mean, that's a relatively easy thing to determine.
Yeah,
and there's a consensus on that. Now, the point is this is going to hurt mankind. That's the point that Al Gore makes. So I want you to compare the worst-case scenario under Al Gore's description of the near future to the present-day reality. And the present-day reality is this. 500 million people get malaria every year. Tens of thousands of kids die from measles every year. Cholera, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis kills 2 million people every year. Is there any scenario, at least according to Al Gore, under which that number of people will die because of global warming?
If you believe everything Al Gore says, then I think global warming would be a real crisis. But, for example, he talks about sea level rise, and he talks very easily about, well, if Greenland melts, the sea levels will rise 20 feet. Right. The consensus is embodied in the UN reports. The most recent one, which came out this year, they come out every 5 or 6 years, said that predicted that sea levels would rise by 2100 by perhaps 14 inches. Now, there's a big difference between 14 inches, faster than the rate in the 20th century or the 19th century, but not a lot faster. There's a big difference between adapting to 14 inches of sea level rise in 100 years and 20 feet. But he goes around as if there's scientific backing for what he says. There isn't.
Here's something that confuses me. Al Gore has asked the participants in tomorrow's concerts to take a 7-point pledge. Some of them make sense. Some of them are a little more confusing. Number one is, I demand my country join an international treaty within the next 2 years that cuts global warming pollution by 90% in developed countries and by more than half worldwide. Why 90% in developed countries and less than that in other parts of the world?
The idea is that we use much more energy per capita. That is to say, it is true that China now has higher emissions than the United States, but they also have 5 times as many people as we do. So their per capita emissions are much lower.
That doesn't really
than
make
ours.
sense because it's a global. I mean, if you believe that global warming is this imminent disaster, it's a global problem, then wouldn't you just care about the bottom line emissions, the aggregate emissions in a country? Why wouldn't you ask China to do what you're asking the U.S. to do?
Because we're involved in wealth redistribution here. That's part of the whole program.
What does that mean?
That we should become much less rich than we are, and people in poor countries like China should not take such a large blow proportionately. So we should live more like the Chinese, and they should live more like, I don't know, people in Indonesia.
What does that have to do with the environment?
Nothing. But it does have to do with the political program, which is what Al Gore is on about. If you look at those 7 points, they're largely about voting for leaders like Al Gore and supporting businesses that Al Gore's companies invest in.
But do you agree that if your bottom line concern were reducing emissions that cause the greenhouse effect, if global warming and reducing it, if that's all you cared about, then you would demand that every country cut emissions, right, and not just the developed ones, i.e. the U.S. and Western Europe?
Yes, that's right.
Huh. Has anybody said anything about this?
Well, I think, global warming is really a phenomenon of the left, and the left is all about redistributing income. And so we have to become an awful lot poorer, and people in China only have to become a little bit poorer to solve this problem, according to the global warming alarmists like Al Gore.
Can you imagine a point in time in the near future when it becomes illegal for famous and well-paid political figures, actors, athletes, and musicians to fly in private aircraft?
No, because if you look at the way this whole thing is put together, important people should never be inconvenienced. It's only people who don't have private jets and limos waiting for them.
But let's say you were on your way to perform at a global warming concert, and the focus of your life was ending this imminent disaster called global warming. You couldn't really take a private jet to that and have a clean conscience, could you?
No, but I think if you really believe what the alarmists are saying we must do, then you wouldn't be able to take a jet at all. You'd have to telecommute to that conference. If Live Earth goes off tomorrow as planned, it really should be the last one of these big global jamborees because they just use too much energy.
Yeah, I am concerned about that as an environmentalist. Myron, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The networks of NBC Universal will be the place to watch the Live Earth concerts from around the world. The Today Show's Ann Curry will host a 3-hour special on NBC Saturday night from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. And the cable networks of NBC Universal, that includes Bravo and MSNBC, will have coverage throughout the day.